Tracing can be an excellent way to get decorative elements into your bullet journal when you don't necessarily feel super confident with your own drawing ability. But with 160 GSM or higher notebooks becoming more and more popular, the process of tracing has become a little more difficult. While the nice thick 160 GSM paper means that we're less likely to get things like ghosting or bleeding in our notebooks, this also means that we can't see through the paper to be able to trace things easily. Today we're going to have a look at 3 different techniques that you can use to trace things into your thick papered notebook. 2 of these will require special tools, while one of them doesn't, so let's start with that one. Our first tracing trick is the one that I like to use the most, and it just involves taking the picture that you want to trace into your notebook, flipping that picture over, and colouring in the back of the page with a graphite pencil. I typically prefer to use a pencil with a dark, soft lead, so something like the B6 pencil that I'm using here. Because the lead is darker and softer, this will allow it to more easily transfer to the pages of my notebook when it comes to actually tracing the image in. Once the back of the picture is completely coloured in though, and do be sure to have that graphite over the entire back of the full design, now we just need to place it into our notebook in the space that we want the image to be traced to. I like to secure it in place with some washi tape just to make sure that it doesn't move during the tracing process, and now that it's in the position we want, we just need to trace over the top of the image. Typically when I'm tracing, I either prefer to use a mechanical pencil so that I can be really precise, or more commonly, I like to use a coloured pen with an ink that isn't too fluid. Because the ink is coloured, I can easily see where I've already traced over, but I don't want the ink to be too fluid because I don't want it sinking in and going through the paper of the image that I'm trying to trace. What's going to happen while we're tracing over the top of the image though, is that the pressure from our pen or our pencil is going to push the graphite from the back of the paper onto our notebook. Once you've traced over the entire image though, you then just have to carefully pull up the washi tape, and you can see we have traced that image into our notebook. As said, the nice part about this technique is that you don't need any special tools, just the picture that you want to trace and a graphite pencil. Our second technique is a variation of this one, but it's made a little bit faster by using carbon paper rather than colouring in the back of the picture. Carbon paper works in exactly the same way, it's just that the colour from the carbon paper is transferred into your notebook, rather than using the graphite we scribbled onto the back of the image in the last technique. When using carbon paper, you just position your sheets so that you have the image that you want to trace on top, followed by the carbon paper, and then your notebook page on the bottom. Again, as you trace over the image, the pressure from your pencil or pen will transfer the colour from the carbon paper into your notebook. One of the benefits of the carbon paper trick is that it's a little bit faster than colouring over the back of the image with a pencil, but it does also require you to have access to carbon paper. Both of our first 2 techniques also run the risk of getting a little bit messy. Because you're using pressure to transfer the colour from one item to the other, so whether that be the graphite from the back of the image in the first technique, or the carbon from the carbon paper in the second, if you apply pressure in the wrong place, this could lead to smudging in your journal, or effectively just making messes that you have to clean up. The third technique is a bit more akin to traditional tracing, where you put the image behind the page in order to trace it onto the page. The issue we described before though was that the paper in our 160 GSM notebooks is too thick to actually see through, so we can't actually see the picture when we put it on the other side of the paper. A tool that can help us see through though is a light box or a light screen. The light screen is also sometimes called a tracing board or an LED tracing board, and the nice part about the tracing board that we have here is that it's super thin, so you can easily slide it underneath the page that you're working on. This one's USB operated, so we just need to plug it in, and once it's plugged in we just tap this button to turn it on, and it has multiple brightness settings, so we have 1, 2, and 3. Can be a little bit difficult to see the difference in the light though, so we'll turn our lights off. So we have brightness setting 1, brightness setting 2, and brightness setting 3. As said though, the nice part about the tracing board is that it is super thin, so we can easily slide it under the page we're working on. Once it's under there though, it illuminates the back of the page, so we can actually see through this paper. A light box, on the other hand, is a bit more bulky and could be a bit tricky to arrange your notebook in such a way that the light source is directly under the page that you're trying to work on. To actually use the tracing board though, you just place the tracing board underneath the page you want to trace the image onto, and then you put the picture in between the tracing board and the page. So So we can see that that's underneath there now and it actually shows up. Then you just need to draw over the outline of the image to put it onto your page. This technique is nice because you don't have any messy graphite residue to deal with, and it's certainly faster than having to colour in the entire backside of an image. The cheaper or cheat version of this technique is effectively just holding your journal up to a window and using the outside light source, aka the sun, to illuminate the back of the page that you're working on, allowing you to see the picture underneath. But again, this can be a little bit awkward when you're working in a notebook rather than just on a single piece of paper. While the tracing board I'm using here is available from Mighty Ape in New Zealand, I've also got links in the description box for similar ones that you can get off Amazon and other places. Certainly a worthwhile tool if you plan on doing a fair bit of tracing. Once our tracing's done though, we can just turn off the light pad, you can pull that out. You can see we have traced that into our journal. I'm using a much harder graphite here with a lighter lead, so that one's a little bit harder to see compared to before. As said, tracing can be great for getting easy decoration into your journal, especially if you don't feel so confident with your drawing ability. Or what I typically use it for is when I want to draw well-known characters into my journal and not mess up their dimensions. That was something that I used when I set up this Disney-inspired bullet journal theme. And I have a link to the full setup on the screen here in the top right hand corner. If you are looking for more bullet journal ideas in general though, then the playlist at the bottom is where it's at. Click or tap on either of those and I'll see you over there.